Yo, what is up guys, Grim here, and in today's video I want to talk aspirational content, but specifically mapping aspirational content. A lot of people are saying there's not too much to do in 3.19 and nothing's too rewarding, so we're here to talk a little bit about something a lot of people are experimenting with, including myself, and that is the resurgence of delirium orb farming. So in the background here, you're going to see a little bit of 80% delirium orb farming in Jungle Valley, my choice of map for this strategy. Now, there's a lot of people using a lot of different takes on how to best maximize this, but the TLDR is that delirium orbs are back, and they're back with a vengeance. So ever since the removal of the fractured fossil infinite duplication trick to duplicate delirium orbs infinitely in Ritual League, we have seen definitely a fall off in juiced mapping content. Basically, as far as most people pushed it was using the delirium mirror in their traditional solo mapping play. Now, people are now getting back on the delirium orb hype train. Why is that? What's different compared to Ritual League? Well, we have a ton of new things, and it is vastly different. So first and foremost, we need to talk about the harvest changes and how it makes the best delirium orbs infinitely more accessible. So, when we talk delirium orbs, we only really want to run the best ones as solo players. Stuff like skittering, diviners, amorphous, cartographers. The really bad ones like armorers and jewelry ones, those were never viable to run and they were never worth to run as a solo player. Namely because they don't drop any good rewards. Now, that's completely different when you consider stuff like skittering or cartographers along those lines. Those award massive amounts of rewards if you can get your hands on them. Now, the problem pre 3.19 is that you really couldn't get a lot of these. They were very rare, and when they did pop up in the economy, people had like 1 or 2 of them, and it wasn't very good. There was no way to acquire like 100 diviners delirium orbs. It just wasn't viable. Now, why is that different in patch 3.19? Well, enter harvest and the rework. So harvest has obviously made a lot of the harvest crafts much more accessible, and one of those crafts is in fact the ability to change the type of reward a delirium orb offers, and it's incredibly cheap to do so in terms of changing it to something which is just good. So let's say you have a stack of 10 armorers delirium orbs, garbage, completely unusable by a solo player, not useful for juicing in the least. You can turn those into a bunch of diviners, skittering, amorphous, or anything you want with the click of a button using harvest. Now, to reroll 10 delirium orbs once, you're gonna require 300 blue harvest essence. Now, this isn't actually it's not a ton of essence. It's around about 6 or 7 chaos per reroll, but you're rerolling a stack of delirium orbs, 10 of them at once. Now, this is weighted towards giving you a bad result, but it's not weighted so poorly that you can't get a good set of delirium orbs in a few clicks. You can get unlucky, of course, but you can also, get some pretty big wins, like getting something like a skittering delirium orb, which you're seeing in the background here. Now, this solves the problem of good rewards being accessible. The best rewards are no longer really that rare, and it just takes Harvest Life Force to get the really good ones. And that solves the biggest problem with delirium orb farming and high-end juicing in softcore trade. You're now able to get good delirium orb rewards consistently, and you're able to get a lot of them, and you're able to run them not at a ridiculous price, because everything is accessible with Harvest, and tons of people are running Harvest. And if it gets too expensive, more people will just run Harvest because it's just so profitable. That's the way it's going to go. So problem number 1 solved. Now, in the past, obviously, we were able to infinitely duplicate delirium orbs using fractured fossils in Ritual League. You basically cloned the map that you wanted to have the delirium orbs on, which meant delirium orb supply was never a problem. Now, why is there going to be so many more delirium orbs than there was in Ritual League? Well, they actually improved the drop rate of delirium orbs substantially after Ritual League included to allow more people to get more access to juice. Now, those are still in place. You still do get a substantial amount of delirium orbs from running the delirium mirror, meaning there's a lot of delirium orbs floating around in the economy. It also works in our advantage that one of the best strategies is to actually farm the delirium mirror this league on the compass. So delirium orbs are flowing into the economy, there's plenty of them, and there's now a way to reroll them into the best types by using harvest juice, meaning you can be running all day the best rewards, and it's now a viable strategy to guarantee that you're going to get those, which is pretty damn awesome. It makes you get that feeling of Ritual League all over again. The juice is accessible, it's here, and we can get some really good rewards from it. Okay, so well, that's all good and dandy, it's accessible now. Well, why is it so much better than it was in Ritual? Well, not so much better, but why is it still good now? What else can you tell me, Grimro, which is gonna make it even more appealing and appetizing? Well, that is God Touch rares. God Touch rares are in the game, obviously for better or for worse, and if you juice up your map, well, you're gonna get a ton of rares, and you have a chance of getting one of the big lotto tickets, like currency, scarabs, guitar touch, anything. Now, the interesting thing about delirium orbs is that they apply a massive increased item quantity and rarity multiplier to your maps. They are insane for adding more items to your maps and juicing up existing monsters already in that map. Now, this is obviously particularly important because God Touch rares, specifically the currency one and the scarab one and stuff like that, will have their rarity and quantity multiplied, meaning when you finally encounter them in these delirium maps, they're going to be even more juicy, which is really, really appealing. So that's one additional angle. Now, of course, how do we get into the aspirational side of things here? Well, the more delirium orbs you place on the map, the higher that increased item quantity and rarity bonus is going to stack, meaning those God Touch rares are going to be more and more and more rewarding the more orbs you invest in your map. Now, again, they're accessible, so it's not too much hassle to get a large quantity of them. So definitely pretty cool there. Now, of course, the more orbs you add, the harder the map will get, almost exponentially. It actually is exponentially harder. The difference between 80% and 100 is staggering, and the difference between 60 and 80 is quite substantial as well. So overall, you are going to now have an incentive to gear up your character, but it's not going to stop there. The increased item quantity and rarity is an extra bonus. Obviously, the time efficiency from running more orbs at once to extract more rewards out of them at once is also there, and it's great as well. But we also need to get into one other factor here, one which was neglected in the previous times of Delirium, and one which I've actually been surprised that I didn't even know. Maybe you guys did, but I certainly didn't know. And that is, the more orbs you add to a map, the higher delirium progress you get. So the difference between adding 3 orbs to a map and, you know, getting the rewards is about 14 loot tiles with the compass. That's how many I got in a map. And then you compare that to when you do 4 delirium orbs, and I got 16 quite easily. So you can imagine that at 5 delirium orbs, you may even get 17 or maybe even 18. So you can see here that it actually scales the amount of loot tiles that you're getting as well. So the more orbs you do, the more time efficiency you're going to have, the more kind of increased item quantity and rarity you're going to have, and the more orb progression you're going to have. And all of these things get fueled by the amount of monsters already existing in the map, which is pretty damn interesting. So you're going to be getting as much incentive to add monsters into your map as possible. So the more monsters you add, the more delirium rewards you'll get, which is again scaled by how many orbs you have. The more God Touch you'll get, which again is scaled by the amount of orbs you have. And overall, it really does reward investing in your map. But it gets substantially harder, which is the interesting part here. So from this perspective, from at least the perspective of right now and me running them and the economy right now, it is definitely well worth doing this. You can make a ton of currency. And why is that? Why is it so much more worth than it was in the past? Well, we've got some new toys since Ritual League when map cloning got deleted. We have the Atlas passive tree. And I'll show you guys a little bit of what I'm working on and what I'm running right now. It's by no means the most optimal route or anything like that. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the basic Dunes Legion strategy, which you guys should definitely check out if you're interested in blasting legions on my channel. I'm taking the basic Dunes Legion strategy, and I'm basically applying this Legion strategy, this Delirium strategy right on top of it. Bang, straight on the top of it. I'm taking all that Legion juice that we had before, bam, getting it all into the Delirium. Now, in addition to that, I'm also picking up Abyss, and I'm also picking up Harbinger and Breach. Those are my choices of leagues. Now, we obviously have far more agency as well as power on our Atlas passive tree than we used to have in Ritually when we used to do the big 5 orb delirium mapping, which means we're going to get so many more monsters in these maps than we used to. It's going to be nuts. In addition to that, we also have influence, which allows you to get obviously the Syrian Exarch or the Eater of Worlds, which give you the option to get obviously not only more monsters, but also the altars, which you can get global altars, or you can even get the minion altars as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second here. But I thought we'd just flip some delirium orbs real quick so I can give you guys a bit of a quick look at how busted it is. It's pretty broken, so you can grab some armor's delirium orbs and come over to the bench here and just go bam, deli. Craft it in. Okay, we got currency. If you don't want currency, you can reroll over that. Currency is particularly good though because it actually drops a new divination card called the Darker Half. Now, this divination card, I don't know how rare it is, I don't know how common it is, but I have gotten quite a few of them and I haven't really been doing many currency divination cards. But I figured I might mention it. It drops this one here, the Darker Half, Eldritch Chaos Orb, which is actually worth a considerable amount of currency. So much so that it might even be worth running the Ornates because you may get pretty lucky and you may get the Divine Orb or you may get the Darker Half. We'll have to test that out. So we'll have to see which ones are the best. But you can just roll it very easily and turn them all into good Delirium Orbs here. Currency again, if we didn't want that, we can keep going. Divination, okay, that's really great. Divination drops stacked decks and all sorts of other stuff like that. So you can see that we've already got some good Delirium Orbs and we're ready to go. Pretty damn nice. Now, obviously, that's pretty all well and dandy, but let's talk a little bit more about this strategy then. What other things are new and fresh in the house for Delirium Orb farming in the future, which we didn't have in the past? Well, we've got the compass, which makes it so that Delirium Orbs progress twice as fast, which definitely makes them way more rewarding here. So you can see here, Delirium reward bars fill 100% faster in your maps, meaning you literally get twice as much progress. So you are taking so many more rewards out of those orbs, and they're so much more valuable to you and the economy in terms of what you're bringing to the table. Now, this is a very cheap compass, and I don't think it's going to go up too much in price because pretty much the price of what you're doing here is gated by the actual orbs themselves. Now, the cool and interesting thing about Delirium Orbs is that they are deterministic. You're always going to get the same rewards over and over and over again. There are a few rare drops here and there, like in the fossilized ones, you could get a prime resonator, but overall, they're pretty consistent, which means that you always know how much you're going to get. And to give you guys a bit of an example of the kind of profits you can make right now, I figured I'd obviously make a spreadsheet, which we can pull up right now if we just find the right tab. It's in price data here. Okay, so if we jump in here, you can see, we got a bit of an error here. All right, we got some NAs, so I guess we can't show you that. This is a live updating spreadsheet we're working on here. But basically, you basically pay like 30-ish C for getting Delirium Orb, and you can expect to make anywhere between like 50 to 60 chaos depending on how many Delirium Orb rewards you get. And the way that you can calculate this is that you get 2.5 scarabs per proc of a skittering orb. So for example, if you get 4 procs, on average you get 10 scarabs on 4 orbs, and then you can just times that by the average price of scarabs, which should be around 1.5 C based off of my calculations recently. So you can see that it would be about 1.5 C. So every time you proc the skittering Delirium Orbs, you would get 1.5 C of the juice, which is pretty damn good there. And it's definitely not too bad in terms of what you can expect to get. Now, if you did times that by 16, you can see that you get quite a sum of currency there, which is pretty impressive. And if you minused out the 30 or so chaos that it takes for the orbs, you can see that you'd make 120 C per map, which is pretty impressive. Definitely not too shabby at all, and you're definitely gonna be making quite a nice profit with just 16 rewards, which we're seeing in the background there, per map. Obviously the compass costs a few chaos as well, but it is substantially worth doing that. And you can obviously get different types of Delirium Orbs as well, which you can kind of experiment with as well. And it's all thanks to that faster progression compass, because it really amps up the rewards that you can get. Now, some people report getting something like 19 rewards in some maps as well, so you can push it even further and get even more profits. Now, what's cool is, of course, if you have the different variability of the challenger, you could do 2 orbs, 3 orbs, 4 orbs, 5 orbs. They should be profitable unless this gets very popular at all stages, but the real money as we mentioned, aspirational content is at 5 orbs, because you will get all those extra multipliers, but the main thing is you'll get additional progress towards those delirium orbs, which might let you push you to that final 19 number, or maybe even 20. I have no idea. You could maybe even get to 20, which is pretty impressive here. So there's a lot of different things to check out, a lot of different things to try, and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, to give you guys a bit of a taste of the strategy which I'm doing before we obviously dive really hard into it in another video, I'll talk a little bit about it. So why am I doing Jungle Valley now instead of Dunes? Well, there's a bit of an interesting quirk about Jungle Valley, and it makes it a pretty enticing choice for doing this strategy. So of course, you can do this with Magic Find. It's very, very potent with Magic Find as well, on stuff like a Crimson Temple or a Defiled Cathedral. But on Jungle Valley, we're specifically trying to target the following. We want to do Legion, mainly because it's going to pay for all our expenses, pretty much, as well as Breach, which is really, really good for the juice, and then that's the main reason we picked that layout. But there's a quirk about Jungle Valley which is very special, and that is that its boss does not exist until you trigger it by running into the boss room. Now, why is this important? Well, for the purposes of the game and Eldritch Altars, it cannot detect a boss, so it never spawns boss rewards. Now, this basically means you automatically boss rush the map on Jungle Valley, which is completely insane. It means that you can run the map like normal, which is a massive boon, especially when you're doing juice of this level. When you're doing juice at this level, running through the map on Dunes to get to the boss is really hard. There's so many monsters in the way and it's really tough. Jungle Valley omits this issue. In addition to that, Jungle Valley has a higher monster count than Dunes by a substantial amount. It has an equivalent density to actual Defiled Cathedral and stuff like that. It's probably about similar to Crimson Temple as well. It's about 520 mobs naturally on average. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that Delirium Orb monsters as well as Influence monsters scale off the base amount of mobs in the map. So Jungle Valley is even better because it has such a high natural mob count, which is obviously going to assist you in getting a high Delirium Orb kind of trigger rate, as well as getting as much juice as possible with the God Touch and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, obviously, finally, Jungle Valley has the Scout Divination card. Exalts aren't worth a lot, but you are going to be getting a lot of Scout Divination cards. I've been getting one every other map, so basically half a Scout card per map. It's definitely not too bad, nothing to sneeze at. You've got a bunch of Exalts there to mess around with after your big farming session. So let's round it all up. Is aspirational mapping content back? Well, for me at least, from what I can see, I now have a reason to build an insane character. I want to upgrade my character so I can run these maps better. Maybe I can build my character well enough that I can do 100% delirium and get the maximum amount of rewards. Now, I think overall, the best character for this will feature a headhunter, and it'll probably also be physical based, and it'll also feature an explosion mechanic, which is physical as well. That will probably be the premier build, just like it was back in Ritual, but now the chase is on. Who's going to make the best 5-orb Delirium Blaster, and whether or not that's going to be on Legion, what orbs are going to be good, what is going to be the meta, I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. In addition to that, there's obviously tons of other things to try. Beyond is obviously well and truly in there and interesting. I've definitely not figured enough out about Beyond. I've been doing some pretty big science with not only the mechanic, but also the tainted currencies. They are definitely incredibly powerful, so there's a lot to discover. The aspirational content is certainly starting to pop back up. I think that there might be some potential for some pretty fun stuff to be happening here in 3.19, even if we're not doing it in the Lake of Calandra. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this short video. I know it's not a full guide or anything like that, but we're going to do more testing over on stream, and once I have the data, I'll do a proper video with my findings, and hopefully you guys tune into the stream and check it out all live. Times will be down below. Until next time, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys then. Cheers.